Yeah, let's go ahead. Okay. All right. So Stacy, can you, I can't, am I on? Yes. Okay. Well, listen, this is Mike Galeazzo. I want to welcome everybody today to this inaugural launch of our manufacturing, you changed it, disruption
Oh, you need the
mitigation
wording.
assistance
Sorry.
program. But anyway, two things real quick. Obviously, we want to have everybody stay muted until you, I guess you have a question, but we'd like to ask you to use the chat feature to submit your questions. Um, and that way we can, Stacy will be taking a look at those and I guess letting Larry know as he does the presentation, the questions that are coming in. Also want to thank Stacy Smith, Miss earlier somebody asked her, what does Stacy do? Stacy's RMI's secret sauce. She came on board last year working with RMI, and it's just made an incredible difference in the kind and the quality of programming that we've been doing. And this year, it's just outstanding. It's just outstanding. So, Stacy, I just want to give you that shout out this morning. Um, I think on your screen, you're looking at something with a quote from the governor: protecting Maryland's manufacturers against COVID 19 is absolutely vital to our state's health and economic recovery. Um, that's for real. I just jump ahead. I served on a task force that the governor put together for as it related to manufacturers and things that manufacturers need to do to kind of keep their operations going well, under COVID. So we thank the governor for his quote and helping us promote this program. But this program, what you're going to hear today, would not have happened without the Maryland Energy Administration, which is run by a lady by the name of Dr. Mary Tung. But on the line, we have Eric Kaufman from MEA and I think Caitlin Madera. And Eric and Kate, I just want everybody to know that at great speeds, you went ahead and responded to this need to make what we're going to see today available across the state. And that's really significant. So Eric, I want to thank you for that. Um, if there's anything you wanted to say, Eric, I'll turn it over to you, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
Thanks, Mike. And I definitely don't want to distract from this important and substantive discussion that needs to be had. But we were glad to, as always, to partner with RMI. This is an extremely important issue, and it's one of those great opportunities where we can look at energy, worker safety, reinvigorating our economy at the same time. And Dr. Mary Beth Tung sends her regards, and is also fully supportive of this initiative.
Well, thanks, Eric. And again, this was a project that Eric and his team really helped make happen. So I want to, before we begin and I introduce Larry, I want to kind of try to explain the situation as it's related to RMI and our services as it relates to energy efficiency. For a number of years, RMI has been involved working with the Maryland Industry Administration and serving manufacturers in two parts of the state. One is called the Pepco service area. The other is the Delmarva service area. So you may not even know who they are if you're getting your electricity, say, from BG&E or from Potomac Edison. So as we talk today, this new program is more to serve those areas that we haven't been able to serve in the past. However, for those of you that are on the phone, on the Zoom call, who happen to be in the Delmarva, I know we have some folks from the Eastern Shore. The best way to know what area you're in is to just look at your electric bill. It's going to tell you. It's going to be embedded in there. So the folks on the Eastern Shore, there's a possibility that you're in that Delmarva service area, and there's a difference in the service that we're able to offer. So, and we'll go into that later on. Um, this program was put together again as a result of this governor's task force indicating that air filtration, handling, aerosol, HVAC systems, these were really all important aspects of a manufacturing facility that needed to be addressed. That came out last spring. Of course, now we even hear the President of the United States talking about the importance of ventilation systems. So we were sort of ahead of the game and saying, hey, it's time that we really thought about reaching out to manufacturers and helping them with this very, very important step. Um, Larry Schoen is a member of ASHRAE. We found Larry. He's been a great guy to work with. And Bob Berzotto is one of our engineers at RMI who's been working with us for a number of years. One of our other engineers, she's not part of this presentation, is Nandini Moli, who has been involved in helping RMI for a number of years with energy efficiency. So what you're going to hear today, just to make it clear, is Larry's going to go through what people need to be thinking about in order to protect their company from disruption as a result of airflow issues. He is also going to be available as a follow-up to today to come out and have folks visit your plant and do an audit or an assessment and provide you with kind of like going to the doctors and they give you a prescription. He'll give you a list of things that you need to be taking a look at. So Larry, you know, with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and Stacy and Bob.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. And talking about getting ahead of the game, this was back in March. Remember that, a year ago? ASHRAE Journal approached me because I've been involved in this issue for a number of years. And at the time, I said the HVAC system has a small role. If I had to say it all over again, I would have put these ifs in a lot bigger letters. The HVAC system has a small role provided that you have one, because a lot of the spread incidences that we found have been in the absence of even a minimal HVAC system. And so that's kind of the first and last bullets on this page. The intermediate ones tell you that there are papers coming out every day, more and more papers, but it really is going to take years until we know definitively, and maybe it may never be completely definitive, till we know how large the HVAC system role can be, how the spread actually happened. And then there's the question of whether the HVAC system itself can be the cause of spread. And many of us in the field believe that's extremely unlikely in the absence of these other problems of low ventilation or bad filtration. So on the next slide, you'll see that sort of summarized. These are the commonalities of the studied outbreaks. Now, how did these outbreaks happen and how did they get studied? They tended to be early on in the pandemic when there were very few people infected. And so you could trace it back to one person who was the source. And a lot of these did happen to occur in China, where the outbreak started. And they control a lot of people studying this, including scientists and community folks. So they were able to trace it in many cases to a single person. Here are the commonalities of what happened. As I said, very minimal or no air filtration, no dilution with that, no or very minimal outdoor air dilution, and small spaces like a restaurant or a bus, crowded with a bunch of people, a call center, and the likelihood of people doing vocal projection, which is great when you want to be heard, but it's not good from the point of view of spreading aerosols and droplets to other people. And this relatively long exposure time. Not to say that we haven't found incidences of transmission in just 5 minutes or so, but the spread tends to be longer exposure in that same room and the air recirculating. Next slide. Shows us a little more detail. So I'm going to start on the left side of the slide, just first because there's a lot on this slide. So short range, 6-foot separation, wear a mask. No matter what anybody tells you about the HVAC system or ions or hydrogen peroxide they're going to put in the air, if you are unlucky enough to be in short distance from somebody who is infected and shedding virus, there is not much the HVAC system is going to be able to do. So these short range, wear a mask and keep separation is something that's sort of beyond our control in the HVAC world. But going down to the oval circle, the oval outline, on the longer range, you can do this dilution and filtration. That's the HVAC part. Now going into the details in the box a little bit to the right, so the two people on the right, we're not giving you a distance there, but you can see the person on the left is creating two things. The larger droplets that you see sort of falling to the ground as you move more to the right, and then the that cloud sort of above. So when you're close to somebody, there's potential for two forms of exposure. One is the droplet that goes directly from person A to person B, but there's also a more concentrated cloud of, everybody knows the word aerosol now. It used to be only those of us in HVAC and aerosol science, but now everybody knows the word aerosol. Same thing as suspended particulates. So these are the two folks close to each other. There's two routes of exposure. But going to the right, there's also this possibility of longer range transmission throughout the room. Now, I still have both of these people in the same room, and it's transmission to another room. That's the one that's more remote, considered by many of us in the HVAC field to be unlikely, but still possible. So these two folks are in the same room. If we have a good HVAC system that's doing a lot of dilution and or filtration, we reduce the possibility. Now in the fine print at the bottom, there's a bunch of numbers there separating the large, medium, and small droplets. What I have found in consulting with all the experts is depends on whom you ask where the size delineation is. And so therefore, as ASHRAE's position document on this subject says, the exact size demarcation is not what's important. What's important is understand the principle that the larger stuff spreads directly, the smaller stuff gets in the air and goes for a longer distance. So the next couple of slides are going to show you similar information in different graphical and verbal formats. Here you see again the same large droplets falling to the ground, the smaller ones going for a longer distance. And again, emphasizing that point I just made in the third bullet, that the distinction, the size distinctions do vary depending on whom you ask. The principle is what's important. And the next slide tells you pretty much this in pure words, if you'd like to see it in that way. 1 to 2 meters for the large droplets. And even as I'm breathing, with any good luck, my aerosols are not containing any infective viruses, but I am generating aerosols as I speak. Singing, sneezing, talking, those make it even worse in terms of droplet or aerosol transmission. And so this advice from the World Health Organization, it really has not changed much over the months. Avoid confined spaces with poor ventilation. Again, the masks we can't control in the HVAC system. Overcrowding is a risk, and then the good ventilation. We'll talk a little bit later in the slide deck about what good ventilation means. So on the next slide, you get the picture. So what the heck do I do? Is it masks? So the problem is you almost have to do what the hospitals do in terms of infection control. And they call that in the final bullet, multiple modalities simultaneously. That means you almost have to do everything, not knowing exactly what's going to make the difference. So, whoops, let me go back and just focus on the underlying language in the first bullet. That even the World Health Organization is saying this distinction between droplets and fomites. Now, what's a fomite? It was on a previous slide, but it's basically something that the infected person touches and then somebody else comes along. It's a doorknob. Doorknob's the classic fomite. But even between fomite and respiratory, it's hard to know because you're close in the same room and nobody is doing controlled experiments. Let's put this group of people in the room and they do this and another group of people. You can't ethically do any kind of controlled experiment like that. And the other bullets emphasize what we've already said. So now the next slide, Stacy, thanks. So the other aspect of building operation, I was in property operations for 10 years before I started my consultancy. And there's so many different types of occupancy. There are those where the people are known. You get the same people coming in every day. There's perhaps a level of trust. Maybe there's some screening. People are knowing each other and possibly willing and able to protect each other better, willing and able to stay home if they think they might be sick. So that's the known or unknown persons. There's how dense is the space occupied? How densely is it occupied? Is it something where it's a transportation waiting room or a showroom where the public is coming in, lots of unknown people in a transient situation, or is it a more fixed occupancy? How likely is it going to be that somebody would be unknown infected in there? Is it somebody who, in their other occupancies, is exposed to a lot of risk? And this sort of summarizes it. Are they informed or informed? Is it members of the general public or a more controlled population? And sadly, you can do all of your best efforts, and you cannot bring, like anything, you cannot bring risk to zero. You can only reduce. And here's what I meant by the HVAC system plays a small role. It's really not the first line of defense. In indoor air exposure, we always say the first rule is source containment. So if you have whether it's a smelly thing you're not going to bring into a room, or whether it's a process that has a dedicated exhaust, we try to get the contaminants out before they get into the rest of the room. So the HVAC system, other than spot exhaust, I would say, is not the first line of defense. There's a lot of resources out there. I don't list them all here, but ASHRAE has a bunch. BOMA has some. I can't even list them here. So next slide. These are of course the strategies, and we're repeating outdoor air ventilation, but there are energy saving controls that under normal circumstances you do want to do these, but perhaps not in the midst of a pandemic. So if you have something that's limiting ventilation based on CO2, some of the modern energy saving systems do that. This may be a time to disable that just temporarily. Bring it back into operation once the risk of this pandemic has gone down. Improve those filtration ratings. I'm sure everybody in property operations has been hearing this over and over again. But the underlying language, seal the edges, I'm not sure that's getting enough attention. Once you put a higher, just like sealing the mask to your face, that the industrial hygienist will do just like that in the filter inside the air handler. If you allow bypass around a filter that now has a higher pressure drop, you're simply reducing the effectiveness of that filter. So you must seal the edges. There are spring steel methods of doing that. There are gasketing methods of doing it. Even tight fitting surfaces can do it. If you can't do those things in a central system, portable room air cleaners with good HEPA filtration. I don't recommend the ionization ones because we just don't know a lot about what those are doing. But good HEPA filtration is a proven and easily comparable process that can improve not only the overall air quality, but reduce the chance of transmission inside a room. And for advanced situations, ultraviolet germicidal irradiation, UVGI. We'll have another slide about that later. So on to the next one, which says what not to do. We generally, even though there was some advice early on, I hate the term that was being used at the beginning, shelter in place, because this is not a shelter in place situation. Shelter in place is when there's an outdoor contaminant, and then perhaps you do want to turn off systems that bring in outdoor air. What we have is a stay-at-home type order, or stay in your facility type order, keep away from people. So we don't want to turn off the ventilation systems. We don't want to shield ourselves from the outdoors. We want to have greater connection with the outdoors and more dilution. And here are the three exceptions. So if you have a known instance, then maybe you turn the system off and you disinfect it before you turn it back on and get the space reoccupied. If you have really poor outside air and all it's doing is recirculating air within the room, then perhaps you do want to turn it off. But that's not most of our systems here. That's most of our systems have outdoor air ventilation. But I'll show you some systems in another slide which you think they do, but when you really look at the details, they don't. And then we don't have this in most of our cities, but international cities have major outdoor contamination. We've gotten rid of a great deal of this thanks to the efforts of our outdoor air quality people. And so generally we don't have this third bullet as a risk. Do not use ozone generators. Use the other types with great caution. We just don't, when I say we, I'm talking about me and many of my other colleagues who are experts in indoor air quality and air cleaning. Use great caution with any new product that says it's going to be the panacea for indoor air. We've wanted one of these for decades, if not centuries, and haven't found one yet, other than good ventilation and good filtration. So next slide, please. And here is going to give you some real practical. I told you I'd show you where you think outdoor air is there, but it's really not. Now, please ignore the manufacturer names on here. This is absolutely no reflection. I should have blocked them out on the individual manufacturers. All of these systems, whether they're rooftops or other type of system, are capable of outdoor air if they're properly installed and set up. But in the foreground, this arrow should have been pointing to the area just below the manufacturer's name. That's where the outdoor air hood should have been installed on this unit, but it wasn't. This was a facility I was called into because people were complaining of, guess what? Stuffy air and odors. Okay. So we went up on the roof and found, well, no wonder. This unit that was in there for several years never had outdoor air put on it. So you can't assume from drawings, you can't assume from even sometimes from balancing reports and even from an inspector's seal, because this was in one of our very carefully regulated counties in Maryland. They missed it too. In the background, you see a system that has, up on that pedestal in the top left of the photo, has an outdoor air hood installed. That's what you want to have. And frankly, the other step you want to do, you want to have somebody open the cabinet, stick their head up in this hood, or at least look in the hood with a flashlight, and make sure that during operation, the vanes on the outdoor air damper are actually open. That's what we mean by visually check it. ASHRAE standard 62.1 calls for measuring, actually verifying this by measurement every 5 years. That's not code, and it's not required by law, but it's certainly ASHRAE's recommendation. Next slide is going to dig a little deeper into the details of how you know that your system is operating properly. So on the far right, you see a flow hood, and this is and you see above that in the photo a ceiling air diffuser. These flow hoods, and here's a technician who's the envy of others, has a stand to carry it around on instead of lugging it by hand. This is a relatively simple and easy way to know that air diffusers in room are actually pushing air. I've seen fire dampers, shutters close ducts. I've seen lining of ducts slough off the inside and block airflow. So over the years, it's good to verify that air is really getting to each room. We talked about the second bullet, disabling carbon dioxide. demand controlled ventilation. You want to have more ventilation now during a pandemic, and and see that the HVAC system really runs continuously. So I should have put a big red line through this, as I have on some of my other slides. You do not want fans in auto, and if it's pulling in outdoor air and it's filtering air, we want that system running constantly and not turning on. We don't want the fan turning on and off based on a thermostat. You may want the heating and cooling action turned on and off, yes, to maintain comfort conditions, but not the fan if it's pulling in outdoor air and it's doing dilution filtration. Now, let me add an aside about, we're starting to think, believe it or not, but maybe we're jumping the gun. But again, when I say we, people in my field and building resiliency are starting to think, what about the next pandemic? What can we do to make buildings more resilient so that we can adapt to the next pandemic? And being able to do things like disable the demand controlled ventilation, increase outdoor air in some more automatic way that's easy to change without having to go, if you're a large facility operator, without having to go to 100 rooftop units or 5,000 rooftop units if you're a chain retailer, and adjust every single one manually, how to be able to do it more automatically. So that's thinking about the future of the next pandemic. Next slide. Now, for a VAV system, it's not as simple as switching the switch on a thermostat to fan on. In a VAV system, it's called variable air volume. Now you have one large central air handler that's often controlling multiple zones by virtue of dampers and controllers that often look something like this, with the damper blade connected to the top left of that device. And they, for thermostatic control, they reduce the airflow to each room. It's important to have the settings on these never go to complete shutoff if the thermostat is satisfied. If you go to complete shutoff, that means you have zero ventilation in your room. That's not something we want. So these, in order to adjust these, really takes a skilled technician to properly set it. And it may require changing some temperature settings at the air handlers so you don't overcool or subcool, overheat or subcool rooms. And also may require some tracking at the central air handler. So again, from the point of thinking about the future for building resiliency, if these are details that facilities, we probably want to start thinking about these, how to check these on a more regular basis and get automatic controls easily adjustable. Next slide, please, Stacey. Okay, here I got the big red X. What to do with your filters. Now here's two improperly installed filters. By dumb luck, the one that's on the top and a little more to the left, actually somehow, now it's a bad filter, but they lucked out in that they at least have a good edge seal. That cardboard is a pretty good seal to the metal flange. But pure dumb luck, because if you look at the one that's on the lower right, there's no seal there. This is the old style, what we used to call furnace filter. It's 1 inch thick. Even though it says 25 by 25 by 2, I believe it's only 1 inch thick. And it's just this pure fiberglass mesh. The better filters now have pleats in them. They have a very good filter media. They're tested. They have a rating to ASHRAE, some sort of MERV stamp on them. So these are very important details of how you install a filter properly. Next slide. Now, this is a size comparison. And again, don't worry about the numbers so much. I'm trying to give you a visual orientation. And, but I'm going to ask you to do something and focus on the details for a moment. The little tiny red dots around here are the ones that are of the size that can carry virus, carry infectious particles. So to some extent, the larger, the blue ones, but the tiny little red ones, those are the size demarcations. So that little tiny red one is PM 2.5 and smaller. That's the size that is most harmful, both from combustion products point of view, but it's also the size that can carry the virus and get and travel longer distance and get deeper into the lungs. I'm less of an expert on the lung part, but certainly on the carry a long distance. Now, if you remember that 2.5 red dot, let's look on the next slide, which has a lot of information. But I'm going to ask you to go to the left column where it says MERV level, and even look first at MERV 9. So about in the middle of the first column, 9, and follow it off to the right. Dust spot, that was the old method of rating filters, but follow along to the right, and you see where it says greater than 50 in the middle column under 1 to 3 microns. Now that's a range of interest. And even, the point here is that even a MERV 9 filter, which is not the MERV 13, it's not the MERV 11, but it's even a MERV 9, and those are readily available in 1-inch thick if you have an old air handler, is at least doing something to filter out. So if I had a small room where I had an infected person, even with a MERV 9 filter, if I keep that fan running continuously, if every time the air goes through the air handler, it's removing 50%, it's at least doing something to keep that room from being a completely enclosed, poorly ventilated space. Better news, as you go down the first column to MERV 13, and follow your eye across to the right, look now 0.3 to 1 micron, which is even smaller. You're doing a great job on 75% of those smaller and 90% or more of the 1 to 3 micron. So that's why people are saying use a MERV 13. It doesn't have to be HEPA. MERV 13 does a great job, but even upgrading your filter to a rating of MERV 9 is doing something. The next slide. And now I said I'd give you a little bit more about UVGI ultraviolet. This is showing a room with on the top left of this room, upper room irradiation. Now, why upper room? Two reasons. One is because we don't want to irradiate people with ultraviolet. It's not good for your skin. It's not good for your eyes. But we do want to irradiate aerosols. Well, as we breathe out warm air, and in most rooms, that's warmer than the room air. Where does it tend to go? Warm air goes up, so it tends to go up to the ceiling. Air supply in most rooms, encouraged by the HVAC system, is circulation up between the lower and upper parts of the room. So by a couple of mechanisms, the air in the room gets to the upper reaches, and we disinfect that air. You have a relatively long exposure time in that upper room. Why did I emphasize long exposure? Because there are people putting these systems, UVGI, into the air handler. Those are great for energy conservation in the air handler. They keep the coils clean. They have some other risks of degrading materials, but they do a good job of keeping the coils clean. It's a more limited circumstance that they can actually disinfect the airstream. You need a higher level of irradiation in a duct system because the residence time in a duct and an air handler is much shorter. So you need more power, or you need a longer distance over which to irradiate. So that's why I'm showing the upper room. Now, where would I use this? I would use this in frankly, in a hospital waiting room or a healthcare waiting room, a transportation waiting room, someplace with a large occupancy of people, unknown risk, lots of flow of people in and out, and I want to supplement ventilation. These systems work better, ironically, in rooms that have lower ventilation rates, because if you have a higher ventilation rate and better filtration, you're already doing so much that you can't do much more with the ultraviolet. So here's the bottom line. Well, let's go to the let's stay on the summary slide. Sorry. Am I out of time, or can we go to the summary slide? One before. Can we go to one slide before this? I'm not hearing anything. And well, the summary on the previous slide is have a good HVAC system and have it running. Increase outdoor air ventilation, improve the filtration, use standalone air handlers and certain standalone room air cleaners with those HEPA filters in some situations, and ultraviolet for particular situations. Um, verify that your system is working the way it's supposed to. And I think we are open to the Q&A and section of our presentation. Thank you for your attention. Stacy, I'm not hearing anybody's audio.
I just got a call from Stacy. She lost her screen. She wasn't able to see this.
Okay.
So, but if anybody's got any questions, I can unmute you, or you could just send in a chat.
Oh, I see. I think Stacy's back. Let me go back to the summary, see if I missed anything in my. I think we covered all this: outside air damper, recirculated merge filter. Yeah, I think we covered all this.
Yeah, I think she's in there. She's just,
Okay.
she's muted.
All right, so Stacy, I think we can go to the next
Yeah.
slide, and which tells people how to submit questions.
Well, it sounds like we don't, from Stacy to me, it looks like, let's see, hold on, she just chatted me. She said her microphone is no longer working, so.
But let's encourage people to ask questions either by chat feature or you can unmute them.
Well, here's the thing, we have everybody's email, so she's going to follow up with information. And for companies that are interested in having Larry come out and visit manufacturing companies, we have a link where you can do that online. So let me kind of go over again. In order to have Larry and others visit your company to do basically a simple kind of like an assessment or audit, you have to be a manufacturer. And on the sign up form on the website, it will actually list all the NAICS codes. So you have to select, the NAICS code that's relevant for your company. Obviously, you can call us if you have any questions. And I think the other thing that's important to know is that the Maryland Energy Administration, particularly with Kate Madeira, they have a number of programs that people can tap into, okay, to if they want to upgrade systems in general for energy efficiency. Now, again, I know we didn't focus too much on energy efficiency, but I want to let you know that that's a big part of what RMI does with its other programs. But the MEA, for those of you that are not in the PEPCO or the Delmarva River service area, the Maryland Energy Administration should be able to help you. We can always help. You know, if you have a question about that, we can put you in touch. So again, there's a form on the RMI website. We were going to show that. Okay, I think it's up there right now. So it says complete and submit your MDMA interest form, and Stacy will follow up with you.
Mike, I see I see a technical question in the chat window. Should I give that a stab?
Yep.
Okay, so Tim Goodrich from Not Mechanical is asking about the use of MERV 13 being situational over, as I interpreted. Is it better for some systems versus others? And he's asking specifically about chilled water versus DX. So chilled water systems do tend to have, many cases, not always, but many cases, larger air handlers with more filtration ability, perhaps a 2-inch thick or even 4-inch thick filter slot. So yes, that could be more helpful. And then the risk on DX system, I'm reading between the lines here that on a DX system, you want to be careful about choking off airflow by putting in a filter that has too high a pressure drop. Now, we all know that this is a concern. You don't want to choke off airflow. And on a DX system, it can result in coil freezing, too low pressures, low pressure cutoff, to get maybe a little too technical. But I have rarely, I don't think I've ever seen a system where upgrading the filter has caused a real world problem with airflow. Having said that, though, I think it's a great idea if you put in a higher level of filtration to at the same time do some basic preventive maintenance and system operation checks. Make sure the refrigerant pressures are okay in a DX system. Make sure the airflow is adequate for the system. Tim, I hope that answered that question. I think the next one's for you, Mike.
Larry, we have a question about, I used the word assessment and audit. Basically, I think we're talking about your checklist. Some people are asking, what would be the things that you'd be looking at when you went into a company?
Well, so so many of the things cross over between energy conservation and protection. So for instance, that systems are operating properly, as we just discussed, with good filtration and good airflow. Ironically, you think putting in a better filter costs money in terms of energy, and it can in terms of fan operation. But if it keeps the coil cleaner, now you have a win-win for both cleaning the air in the room and also better energy conservation. So we look at things like, how's your airflow? What's the airflow scheme within a facility, whether it's on the manufacturing floor or an assembly floor, or whether it's in a break room or in an office area, an ancillary area. Where is the air flowing? And that would look at both the energy portions as well as the air quality portions. Is there enough airflow? Is there good? Are there particular areas where the exposure is high, and we should be maybe worrying about not enough airflow? Is the airflow good in terms of, from the point of view of personnel protection from the industrial process, but also protection from each other? Mike, anything on this?
Does anybody have any questions? There were two people that asked about that. I was asking Stacy if she had that checklist. I didn't know if that would kind of represent a little more specific. But basically, a lot of this is almost customized, correct, to the facility, depending on when you walk into a place. I guess it's going to be a little different, or am I wrong on that?
That's exactly right. I mean, I showed you a few examples of particular facilities, but in order to apply a principle like outdoor air ventilation, filtration, you need to look at the details. The devil's in the details. And
So
God
Scott Phillips asked a question about that. So Scott, I guess, Larry addressed like the big chunks, but I guess when they walk into a facility, it's probably a slightly different process depending on the facility.
Right. And I think Stacy has something up there.
Not sure. Hold on. Stacy, we can't really see that.
Well, I mean, I see it.
Is that you?
Right.
Okay. Couldn't move it down. Yeah.
Maybe if we could have it fill up more, make the window a little larger, you'll see more of the bullets.
Yeah, she may be having trouble. Okay.
No, she's got it.
Yeah.
And then if you go further down, if we scroll down a little bit, you'll see the specifics of.
Okay.
So characterizing the HVAC system, the controls. So these would all be the elements of a facility evaluation.
Okay. Any other questions? Larry, you did a great job. Bob, you've been quiet. Do you have anything you want to say? Bob Arzado?
No, Mike, I'm okay. I think Larry covered it well.
Yeah, you did.
I see another technical question from
Okay.
Luke Chow.
Oh, yeah.
Can heater coils rise to a dangerous temperature when HEPA filters are used in the system? It's not installed specifically for HEPA filters. So I'm trying to think of, so if you had, for instance, a smaller fan coil or VAV box or a fan powered induction unit, and you had an electric heating element, because that's the only one I can think of where temperature could rise to dangerous levels, and you choke off the air by putting in too high a pressure drop filter. And let me emphasize, you don't need a HEPA filter. MERV 13 is great. It's 95% of the particle size of interest. You don't the benefit of going from 95 to 99.7% is minimal. So you don't need HEPA, first of all. If you put a HEPA in, something with too high a pressure drop, you could choke off the air. Now, properly installed electric heater coils are supposed to have airflow proving switches that prove that enough air is flowing. And so you don't have this situation. But as we know, safety devices can fail. So I guess the advice here is the same as I said for the DX systems. If you're going to put in a higher level filter, it's a great idea to check the operation, make sure the airflow is sufficient when you put it in. And when you put in a high efficiency filter, what do you expect it to do? You expect it to do its job and catch particles. As it catches particles, the pressure drop increases. So you can't just put it in. It's not put it in once and forget it. It's put it in and check it. I would check it in a few days. If I put in a higher level of filtration in a system that never had it, I'd check it in a few days and see if it's loading up and see if I have airflow problems. The last thing you want to do is shut down a facility because of a fire, because of trying to reduce risk on one area. So I think that's a great point you raised, Luke Chow.
Well, thanks, Larry. One of the things Stacy just texted me to remind you that she's going to be sending out a follow-up email. So there'll be a sign-up form in there if you're interested in having a site visit by Larry and his team to do the no-cost assessment. So be on the lookout for that. And if you're interested, just fill out the form and get back in touch with us. Well, I don't think there are any more questions. I'm not seeing anything else. So let me just, thank Larry. Thank you so much. Extraordinarily thorough job. Nice job. And again, you all will get an email from Stacy. And if you're not a manufacturer, please share this program with manufacturers, because again, the Maryland Energy Administration has made funding available for us to go out and to help companies, have Larry go through the process that we talked about today. So unless I hear another question, I guess we're finished for today. I want to thank everybody. Stacy, thank you. I hope you get your window back. And have a good day, everybody. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Hey, Neil, give me a call.